Beloved, today we draw near with quiet confidence, not with noise or fear, but with trust anchored in the living God. The words of the Psalms are not ancient echoes only, they are living breath for weary souls. Psalm 18 reminds us that the Lord is our rock, our fortress and our deliverer. Psalm 91 assures us that whoever dwells in the shelter of the Most High shall rest in the shadow of the Almighty. Together, they teach us how to stand firm when the world feels unsteady. We come not because we are strong in ourselves, but because God is strong on our behalf. When dangers surround us, seen and unseen, the Lord does not sleep. He is a refuge that cannot be shaken. He covers us as a shield, not only from what we fear, but from what we do not even know to fear. In Him our hearts learn to be still. To pray these psalms again and again is to train the soul in trust. Each time we say, "The Lord is my rock," fear loosens its grip. Each time we declare, "He will command His angels concerning me," hope rises quietly within us. Strength is not always loud. Often it is the gentle certainty that God is present, guarding our way, guiding our steps. So today we place ourselves under His covering. We rest in His promises. We walk forward not anxious, not shaken, but protected and strengthened by the One who saves, defends, and remains faithful through every season. May our hearts dwell in His shelter, and may our lives reflect the peace of those who trust in the Lord. When we confess that God is our unshakable refuge and defender, we are not reciting poetry alone, but entering into a living truth that has sustained the faithful through generations. Psalm 18 opens with a declaration of love rooted in experience. "I love you, O Lord, my strength." This love is not abstract. It is born from rescue, from survival, from having stood in moments where human strength failed and only divine help remained. To call the Lord our rock is to say that when everything beneath our feet felt uncertain, He alone did not move. Empires rise and fall, seasons change, relationships shift, but God remains firm, immovable, and faithful to those who seek Him. A refuge is not merely a place one visits casually, it is where one runs when danger is near. In ancient times, a fortress was built high and strong, inaccessible to enemies, designed to protect the vulnerable within its walls. When Psalm 18 and Psalm 91 speak of God as refuge, fortress, shield, and stronghold, they invite us to understand protection not as distance from trouble, but as safety within it. The storms may rage, the arrows may fly by day, and the terrors may walk by night. Yet the one who dwells in God is not abandoned to fear. Dwelling means remaining, abiding, choosing to stay close rather than fleeing into despair. Psalm 91 begins with a quiet but powerful condition. "He who dwells in the secret place of the Most High shall abide under the shadow of the Almighty." Protection flows from proximity. The shadow implies closeness, not distance. One cannot rest under a shadow unless one is near the source casting it. This teaches the soul that true safety is not found in constant motion, constant worry, or constant self-defense, but in remaining near to God. Many seek protection by controlling outcomes, predicting dangers, or building walls of anxiety, but the Psalms guide us toward a deeper wisdom. Safety is a relationship before it is a result. God as defender means He actively stands between us and destruction. Psalm 18 speaks of the Lord responding when the psalmist cried out, reaching down, drawing him out of deep waters, and rescuing him from strong enemies. This reveals a God who is not passive. He hears, He moves, He intervenes at the right time. Even when deliverance does not come in the way we expect, it comes in the way that preserves our souls. Sometimes God removes the danger, sometimes He strengthens us to pass through it. In both cases, He remains our defender. The human heart often struggles with unseen threats. Psalm 91 addresses this directly, speaking of hidden traps, deadly pestilence, and terrors that stalk in darkness. These are the fears that do not always have names, the anxieties that whisper in quiet moments, the dangers we sense but cannot explain. God's protection extends even here. His covering is not limited to what we can identify. He shields us from what we do not know, what we could not foresee, and what we could never fight on our own. This is why faith brings rest. When we trust in God's defense, we are freed from the exhausting task of guarding ourselves against everything. To say God is our shield is to accept that we are not self-sufficient. A shield is carried into battle because the warrior knows he is vulnerable. The Psalms do not deny human weakness, they place it honestly before God. Strength in Scripture is not the absence of weakness, but the presence of God in the midst of it. Psalm 18 does not say, "I was never afraid," but rather, "The Lord was my support." This distinction matters deeply. It means that fear does not disqualify us from protection. Crying out does not make us weak. Trusting God does not make us passive. It places us under a defense greater than our own abilities. God's role as defender also brings moral clarity. Protection in the Psalms is often connected to righteousness, not as perfection, but as alignment. Psalm 18 speaks of walking in God's ways, not turning aside, and keeping His commands before the heart. This teaches that divine protection is relational rather than transactional. It is not a bargain, but a bond. When the heart seeks God sincerely, even in struggle, God responds with faithfulness. This does not mean the righteous never suffer, it means suffering does not have the final word. Psalm 91 promises angelic guardianship, saying God commands His angels to guard us in all our ways. This is not meant to inspire reckless living, but deep assurance. The unseen world is active on behalf of those who trust in God. While we may not perceive this protection, it remains real. Many dangers never reach us because God's defense intervenes long before we are aware. This truth invites humility and gratitude rather than fear. It reminds us that our lives are held in hands stronger than our own. God as refuge also means emotional shelter. Many wounds are not physical but inward, formed by loss, betrayal, disappointment, and prolonged waiting. The Psalms repeatedly turn inward pain into prayer, showing that God does not only guard the body but also preserves the heart. When we hide ourselves in God, we are not escaping reality, we are finding a safe place to heal within it. His presence quiets the soul, steadies the thoughts, and restores perspective when emotions threaten to overwhelm us. Repeated prayer is not an exercise in persuasion, as though God must be convinced to act, but a discipline that reshapes the inner life of the one who prays. When the faithful return again and again to the words of Psalm 18 and Psalm 91, something quiet and enduring begins to form within the soul. Fear does not disappear suddenly, nor do troubles cease at once, but the heart slowly learns where to rest. Prayer becomes a place of formation where strength is built not through force, but through trust patiently renewed. The human spirit is easily unsettled. News, circumstances, memories, and uncertainties constantly press upon the mind. A single prayer spoken once may comfort briefly, but repeated prayer engraves truth deeply into the heart. Each time the words are spoken, they sink a little further, like water shaping stone, not by power but by persistence. When one declares again and again, "The Lord is my rock and my fortress," the soul begins to believe what the mouth confesses. This is how faith matures, not through dramatic moments alone, but through steady return to God's promises. Psalm 18 shows us a believer who remembers deliverance by recounting it. The psalmist tells the story of being surrounded, threatened, and overwhelmed, yet rescued by God's mighty hand. By repeating this story in prayer, the heart learns to see present trials in light of past faithfulness. Repetition trains memory. It teaches the soul not to forget what God has already done. Forgetfulness weakens faith, but remembrance strengthens it. Each prayer becomes an act of spiritual memory, calling to mind that the same God who delivered before remains active now. Psalm 91 deepens this practice by inviting the believer to dwell, not visit. Dwelling implies time, consistency, and commitment. To pray the same promises repeatedly is to choose dwelling over distraction. It is a decision to remain under God's covering, even when the world demands constant attention. In this dwelling, peace slowly replaces panic, not because danger vanishes, but because the heart is anchored. The repeated assurance that God is a refuge and shield creates an inner stability that circumstances cannot easily shake. Quiet strength grows where anxious striving once lived. This strength is not loud or boastful. It does not rush to defend itself or prove its faith. It waits, it trusts, it rests. Repeated prayer teaches patience because it reminds the believer that God's timing is wise even when it is slow. Many prayers are not answered immediately, but the act of praying itself sustains the soul while waiting. Strength is found not only in the outgo, me, but in the ongoing relationship built through prayer. Fear thrives on uncertainty, but repeated prayer confronts fear with truth. Psalm 91 speaks directly to fear, naming terrors, arrows, plagues, and dangers, then placing them beneath God's authority. When these words are spoken daily, fear loses its power to dominate the imagination. The mind learns a new pattern, replacing anxious thoughts with divine promises. Over time, peace becomes the natural response, not because fear is denied, but because it is answered by trust. Repeated prayer also humbles the heart. Each return to God acknowledges dependence. It admits that strength does not come from self-reliance, but from grace. This humility is not weakness, it is clarity. It frees the soul from the burden of control. When one prays Psalm 18 again and again, declaring God as deliverer, one quietly releases the illusion of self-sufficiency. This release brings relief. Peace follows when the soul no longer carries what it was never meant to hold. There is a refining effect in praying the same sacred words over time. At first, the prayer may be spoken out of need. Later, it is spoken out of trust. Eventually, it becomes a language of communion. The words shape desire, align the will, and soften the heart. Repetition allows the prayer to move from the lips to the mind to the heart, and from the heart into daily living. Strength formed this way is not situational, it is lasting. Psalm 91 promises rest under God's shadow, a rest that is not merely physical but spiritual. Repeated prayer leads the soul into this rest by slowing it down. In a world that values speed and immediacy, prayer teaches stillness. Stillness is not inactivity, it is attentive trust. As the believer prays again and again, the heart learns to be still before God, confident that He is at work even when nothing seems to change. Repeated prayer also creates resilience. When trials return, as they often do, the soul is not unprepared. It has practiced trust. It has rehearsed hope. The words of the Psalms rise naturally in moments of distress, not as forced optimism, but as familiar truth. This is the fruit of repetition. What is practiced in peace becomes strength in crisis. There is also comfort in familiarity. The same words prayed in sorrow, in joy, in fear, and in gratitude become companions through every season. Psalm 18 and Psalm 91. Do not grow old, they grow deeper. Each time they are prayed, new meaning is uncovered, shaped by current circumstances. The prayer remains the same, but the one praying is changed. This ongoing transformation is gentle but profound. Repeated prayer aligns the heart with God's perspective. It slowly shifts focus away from threats and toward trust. It reminds the believer that life is held within a greater purpose, guarded by a faithful God. This alignment produces peace that does not depend on outcomes. Even when answers are delayed or different than expected, the heart remains steady, knowing it rests under divine care. Strength formed through repeated prayer is inward before it is outward. It manifests as patience under pressure, calm in uncertainty, and hope in darkness. It does not deny pain, but it refuses despair. This strength is rooted in the assurance that God is present, attentive, and faithful. The believer may still feel weak, but weakness no longer leads to fear. It leads to prayer. Peace, too, grows gradually. It is not forced or manufactured. It emerges naturally as trust deepens. Repeated prayer teaches the heart that it is safe to rest in God, even when answers are not immediate. This peace guards the mind, not by removing thoughts, but by steadying them. Over time, the believer notices that anxiety no longer dominates as it once did. Calm becomes familiar. Rest becomes possible. In praying Psalm 18 and Psalm 91, repeatedly the believer participates in a rhythm that has sustained the faithful for centuries. This rhythm connects the present moment to a long history of trust. It reminds the soul that it is not alone, that others have prayed these same words in their own struggles and found God faithful. This shared language of faith strengthens the individual heart. Repeated prayer also teaches surrender. Each return to God is an act of letting go. It releases outcomes, fears, and expectations into God's care. Surrender does not mean resignation, it means trust. It acknowledges that God's wisdom exceeds human understanding. In this surrender, peace is found because the soul no longer fights what it cannot control. Ultimately, repeated prayer forms a life anchored in God rather than circumstances. It creates a steady center that remains firm whether days are calm or chaotic. The believer becomes rooted, not easily shaken, because trust has been practiced over time. Strength and peace become habits of the heart, cultivated through faithful return to God's promises. This is the quiet power of praying again and again. It does not draw attention to itself. It does not seek recognition. It simply remains faithful. And in that faithfulness, the soul is strengthened, fear is softened, and peace takes deep and lasting root under the shelter of the Most High.